Um, Thank you, Sarah. I always feel like I'm at an AA meeting when I have to say this. My name's Lawrence Haddad. I am an economist, but I'm an economist. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you to Docus for inviting me. I feel quite humble being here with so many development experts, so many development thinkers, so many development practitioners. I will try to make this interesting and try to give you some ideas perhaps that other people haven't given you so that it's not too redundant, my talk. I don't have all the answers to the questions I'm going to pose in this talk. They're actually really difficult questions to answer, and I don't think thinking of them in terms of answers is not perhaps terribly helpful. It's more of a process of discovery and exploration towards finding answers to these things. But I feel that the events of 2008 and 2009, various people call them different things, food, fuel, and what's the last one, financial crises. Some people call it the perfect storm. There are all sorts of things that people call it. But the series of dislocations, the series of shocks, this series of disruptions, all of them on top of sort of a drumbeat of uncertainty due to climate change, have really been a wake-up call for the development, for everyone, but for the international development community, I think in particular. I think international development was born in the post-colonial era. It's very much a creature of the 60s and 70s, and the theme of my talk is that I think it's finally beginning to wake up, and I include myself and my own organisation, the Institute of Development Studies in the UK. We're finally beginning to wake up to the 21st century, even though we're 10 years into it. So, we're not in Kansas anymore. You know the Wizard of Oz, and that's one of the lines that Dorothy says to her dog in The Wizard of Oz when they land in Oz. We're not in Kansas anymore. And certainly throughout 2008 and 7, 8, and 9, I felt that we're in a different place as a development community. So I want to talk about four things. One, what should the measure of progress be in development? Who are the new voices we should be listening to? And new voices is one of the key themes of this symposium. How should the people who are saying these things that we should be listening to, how should we work with them? And what is it that motivates us as a development community? So what should we measure as progress? You've probably all seen these kinds of pictures before. On the vertical axis you've got, that's called mean life satisfaction. Some people call it happiness, some people call it well-being, but it's a set of indicators that relate to relational, psychological, as well as material assets, if you like. And on the horizontal axis is GDP per capita. So GDP per capita is still king. We just had the second leaders debate in the UK last night, and all of them were talking about economic growth and GDP still. What you see here in this relationship, and I couldn't find Ireland in this picture, what you see in this picture is a relationship between satisfaction or happiness and GDP per capita. It goes up quite strongly at the low incomes, so income increases at GDP increases at low GDP translates into high satisfaction as material needs are met, and then it really tapers off. So if you try to find the UK, which I can't, if you try to find the UK, it seems to be on a journey. Well, it wants to get to Denmark, which is the top right-hand corner, and if it started off where Spain is, it doesn't seem to be going on a very direct route from Spain to Denmark. It seems to be increasing GDP per capita, but not doing much on the satisfaction scales. So we know that GDP per capita is not the be-all and end-all of what we're trying to do. At best, it's a means to an end, and that's only sometimes is it a means to an end. Sometimes it's a means to a very bad end. You've probably all seen this picture as well. It's from the Sustainable Development Commission. I think it's based on UK citizens. And it's basically trying to get a sense of what is it that drives happiness and well-being. And it's a little bit misleading because it sort of indicates that money and finances are not that important. But of course money and finances help us to purchase good healthcare, and they help us to find nice places to live. Nevertheless, at least half of the things that generate well-being and happiness in this UK population are related to things that are essentially relationships: partner, spouse, family relationships, community and friends. So again, giving us the sense that GDP per capita is not, and even poverty reduction is not the be-all and end-all of measuring a society's progress. And here's just an example from some work I've been doing in India. So India is one of the big success stories in terms of economic growth. It's been growing at an unprecedented rate for the last 15 to 18 years. This blue line says if 93, 94 is 100, 2004, 2005 is 153. So the real per capita GDP has gone up by 53%. That's a pretty remarkable increase when you take into account it's real, it's inflation adjusted, and it's also adjusted for population growth. But look what's happened to infants who are underweight, undernourished, malnourished. The numbers that are not malnourished have only gone up by 12% over that 15-year period. And India really is an economic powerhouse, but a nutritional weakling. And there's a massive governance disconnect between the economic growth and what's happening in malnutrition. So I think the first very simple point I want to make is fairly obvious. This is a picture of fool's gold, apparently. Not all economic growth is good, and not all economic growth is bad. And I think we need to internalize that. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but also don't reify GDP and economic growth. And Dudley Sears, who's one of my predecessors at IDS, said in '69, GDP per capita, how long ago was that? 41 years ago. GDP per capita should be dethroned. Well, it hasn't yet. It will not be easily dragged out of the palace. The Sarkozy Commission that Stiglitz and Sen are working on, I don't think is radical enough on proposing alternative indicators of society's progress. This is some stuff we're working on at IDS. It's somewhat I don't know, not terribly sensibly called 3D human well-being, but it's trying to get across the three dimensions of well-being. One is what a person has. One is what they can do with what they have. So what they have is assets. What can you do with assets? You can weather storms. You can ride out shocks. And what meaning do these give to their goals and how they achieve them? So meaning is very important, and how you achieve the goals. Is it sustainable? Is it equitable? Is it respectful? Those things are very important. And there are lots of indicators, lots of quantitative indicators out there in the research community that I think folks like you could be piloting. If you're already not, you're way ahead of me. I'm way ahead of the research community. The practitioner community often is. But I would encourage you to experiment with some of these well-being indicators and some of your M&E baseline and follow-up work. New voices. I like this picture because it obviously has new voices in it, but it also has 20 keys, major and minor keys from the piano. And I like it because effectively the G20 has taken over from the G7 and the G8 as the sort of global club that tries to